Hey there, this is Eric Anderson. I have here with me Brian Johnson, and we'll be presenting the first lesson of this course, building construction.
Yeah, Eric, knowing some basic info about how buildings are constructed is necessary to know how a fire will behave and what dangers might be faced in a building.
Yeah, having worked as a firefighter, it's been ingrained in me that knowing building construction is key to safety. As a famous fire service instructor, Frank Brannigan, always said, "The building is your enemy. Know your enemy." What he's referring to is the fact that certain types of construction can result in more dangerous fires and the potential for structural collapse.
That's right, Eric. I'm very familiar with that as well. And while as an inspector we'll have a different focus than a firefighter, knowledge of building construction will be important as we talk about fire safety in the buildings, especially as we progress into conducting fire inspections.
Okay, so to break this up a little bit, we're going to focus on three main areas: materials that are used in constructing a building, the types of construction, how we classify each building we look at, and building components like roofs and interior finishes.
Okay, so I assume we're going to talk about construction materials first?
You got it. Construction materials are broken into two categories: structural elements, which hold the building up. This can be thought of as the skeleton of the building. And non-structural elements, those which enclose the building and divide areas, but do not actually hold the building together.
The most common structural element that we're going to see are wood, masonry, concrete, and steel. We need to keep in mind these materials may be used to hold the building up, or they may be non-load bearing, but the type of material and how it is put together is what determines how well the structure is going to hold together under a fire condition.
That's right. And for the non-structural elements, we can see aluminum, glass, gypsum, or plastic used to build things. But these materials are not as strong and so are rarely, if ever, used as structural elements.
Yeah, they might not be structural, but they definitely can increase or decrease the ability of a fire and smoke to spread throughout a building.
So there's four factors that we're interested in regards to how each type of material will behave in a fire. Combustibility, meaning that the material will actually burn. Thermal conductivity, meaning how quickly heat will move through the material. Decreased strength, does it weaken when it's exposed to heat? And thermal expansion, does it elongate or grow when exposed to heat?
So why don't we start first with looking at wood. Obviously it's combustible, and that's going to be our chief concern here. In a fire, wood will burn and add fuel. In order to protect it from fire, we often see it covered by gypsum or stucco or another fire-resistant material that has some good resistance to thermal conductivity.
Another common construction material, particularly in many of our historic buildings, is masonry. This refers to stone, blocks, or bricks. Decreased strength is going to be our chief concern with this material in regards to fire. Masonry doesn't burn, but a fire can weaken the construction and cause a collapse.
Good. And then a lot like masonry is concrete, although concrete means poured concrete, not blocks like masonry. These also are not going to burn, but the heat of a fire can cause it to start breaking apart, which can cause a collapse. Again, decreased strength is our chief concern here.
Right, and steel is the strongest material that we're going to see used in construction. This is why all high-rise buildings are going to be constructed out of steel. Obviously, steel won't burn either, but it will expand and bend when heated in a fire, which can result in the potential of a collapse. Steel can succumb to the efforts of thermal expansion, thermal conduction, and decreased strength.
Yep, and because of this, many buildings have the metal components covered with a fire-resistant material as well.
Yeah, that's right, Brian. We'll see some examples of that when we talk a little bit more about building types.
So you've already mentioned these non-structural materials. What do we need to know about them?
Well, you can see on this slide what they're typically used for. Gypsum is fire resistive and used to protect buildings from fire, as you've already mentioned. Commonly, you'll hear gypsum called drywall, sheetrock, or plasterboard. The remaining materials offer little, if any, blocking of fire and heat. Plastic in particular will melt or burn, not only adding to the fire, but adding additional toxic and flammable fumes to the building in a fire.